Hi, I'm Rachel. My sister Natalie slammed my 6-month-old daughter's high chair so hard that Emma hit her head on the tray, and when I confronted her, she laughed and said accidents happen. Then my mother, the U.S. Surgeon General, walked into that room and made a phone call that changed everything. When the social worker arrived 3 hours later with a court order, my sister's face went completely white. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The morning started like any other Tuesday in our family's sprawling estate in McLean, Virginia. Sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the breakfast room, casting golden patterns across the Italian marble floors that my mother had personally selected during the home's renovation 15 years earlier. The house had been featured in Architectural Digest twice, a testament to both our family's prominence in Washington circles and my mother's impeccable taste in interior design. I was feeding Emma her morning puree, a carefully prepared blend of organic sweet potato and quinoa that I had made fresh the night before. At 6 months old, Emma was just beginning to explore solid foods, and each meal represented a milestone in her development that filled me with pride and wonder. Her chubby fingers grasped at the spoon as I guided it toward her mouth, and her delighted giggles echoed through the spacious room whenever she successfully captured a bite. The domestic tranquility felt almost surreal, given the weight of responsibility that constantly surrounded our family. My mother, Dr. Margaret Chen Harrison, had been appointed as the 19th Surgeon General of the United States 8 months earlier, making her one of the most recognizable faces in American public health. Her confirmation hearings had drawn national attention, not only for her groundbreaking research in pediatric cardiology, but also for her commitment to addressing health disparities in underserved communities. Living in the same house as the nation's top doctor brought both privileges and pressures that I was still learning to navigate as a new mother. Security personnel maintained a discreet but constant presence around the property. Media requests arrived daily through official channels. Every public appearance required coordination with multiple government agencies. Yet within the walls of our home, my mother insisted on maintaining as much normalcy as possible, particularly when it came to her relationship with her granddaughter. Emma represented a source of pure joy for our entire family, a bright spot amid the complex demands of public service and professional achievement. Her nursery occupied the corner room on the second floor, decorated in soft pastels and filled with educational toys that my mother had researched extensively before purchasing. The room overlooked the garden where generations of our family had played, and I often found myself imagining Emma taking her first steps on the same brick pathways where I had learned to ride a bicycle decades earlier. My sister Natalie had arrived from New York the previous evening, ostensibly to spend quality time with Emma and provide support during what she described as a challenging period in her own life. Natalie worked as a marketing executive for a prestigious advertising agency, a career that provided her with financial independence and creative fulfillment, but also subjected her to intense pressure and unpredictable schedules. The relationship between Natalie and me had always been complex, shaped by the natural competition that often exists between siblings, and complicated by the different paths our lives had taken. While I had chosen to focus on family and had married my college sweetheart David, a successful attorney who shared my values and priorities, Natalie had pursued an aggressively ambitious career trajectory that left little room for personal relationships or family commitments. Our mother's appointment as Surgeon General had affected both of us differently. I felt proud of her achievements and grateful for the opportunities her position provided our family, but I also worried about the additional stress and scrutiny that accompanied public service at the highest levels. Natalie, however, seemed to view our mother's prominence as validation of our family's superiority, and often referenced the appointment in professional and social contexts in ways that made me uncomfortable. The breakfast routine that Tuesday morning followed patterns established over years of family tradition. Emma sat in her custom-made high chair, a beautiful piece crafted from sustainable hardwood that my mother had commissioned from a local artisan. The chair represented both functionality and aesthetic appeal, designed to grow with Emma through her toddler years, while maintaining the sophisticated style that characterized our home's interior design. I had positioned Emma's chair near the large windows that overlooked the garden, allowing her to observe the birds and squirrels that frequented the oak trees while she ate. The natural light enhanced her developing visual awareness, and I often caught her tracking the movement of leaves in the breeze, with the focused concentration that indicated rapid neurological development. Natalie entered the breakfast room at approximately 8:30, dressed in the designer workout clothes that constituted her standard attire during family visits. Her appearance always reflected the polished professionalism that had contributed to her success in the competitive advertising industry, but I had noticed increasing signs of stress and irritability during recent visits that concerned me. "Good morning, sunshine," I said cheerfully as Natalie approached Emma's high chair. "Someone's been asking about her Aunt Natalie all morning." Emma responded to Natalie's presence with the enthusiastic arm-waving and babbling that indicated recognition and excitement. At 6 months old, she had begun to distinguish between familiar and unfamiliar faces, and Natalie's visits always generated obvious delight that warmed my heart, despite my growing concerns about my sister's emotional state. Natalie smiled and reached out to stroke Emma's soft hair, but her movements seemed forced and mechanical rather than genuinely affectionate. I had begun to notice that Natalie's interactions with Emma often felt performative, as though she were fulfilling social expectations rather than expressing authentic emotion. "She's gotten so big," Natalie said, her voice carrying an undertone that I could not immediately identify. "Must be all that organic food you're constantly preparing." The comment contained a subtle criticism that was typical of Natalie's communication style. She frequently made observations that could be interpreted as either compliments or insults, leaving the listener uncertain about her actual intentions. I had learned to ignore these ambiguous statements, rather than engaging in conversations that often led to unproductive arguments. "The pediatrician says she's developing perfectly," I replied, focusing my attention on Emma's feeding rather than Natalie's mood. "Her motor skills are actually ahead of schedule, and her social engagement is remarkable for her age." Emma chose that moment to demonstrate her developing pincer grasp by picking up a small piece of sweet potato and successfully guiding it toward her mouth. The achievement represented weeks of practice and development, and I felt the familiar surge of maternal pride that accompanied each of her milestones. "Very impressive," Natalie said, but her tone suggested distraction rather than genuine interest in Emma's accomplishments. I continued feeding Emma while making casual conversation with Natalie about her work projects and social activities in New York. The conversation felt stilted and superficial, lacking the natural flow that had characterized our relationship during childhood and adolescence. I found myself wondering whether the distance between us represented normal sibling evolution or reflected deeper changes in Natalie's personality and priorities. The morning progressed peacefully until Emma began showing signs of fatigue that indicated her approaching nap time. She rubbed her eyes with tiny fists and made the soft whimpering sounds that I had learned to recognize as early signals of overstimulation. The feeding session was nearly complete, and I began preparing to transition Emma from her high chair to the nursery for her morning rest. "I think someone's ready for a nap," I said, reaching for the damp cloth I used to clean Emma's face and hands after meals. Emma's response was to bang her small palms against the high chair tray, a behavior that typically indicated either excitement or frustration depending on the context. In this case, her facial expression and body language suggested that she was processing too much sensory input and needed the calm environment of her nursery. Natalie had been scrolling through her phone during the final minutes of Emma's feeding, responding to work emails with the focused intensity that characterized her professional engagement. However, as I began the cleanup process, she set her phone aside and approached Emma's high chair with sudden interest. "Let me help with that," Natalie said, reaching toward the tray release mechanism. I appreciated the offer of assistance, particularly since managing Emma's post-meal cleanup, while maintaining her comfort and security required coordination that was easier to accomplish with help. Natalie's involvement also represented an opportunity for positive interaction with Emma that might strengthen their developing relationship. However, as Natalie attempted to release the high chair tray, something went wrong. Whether due to unfamiliarity with the mechanism or simple clumsiness, her hands slipped and the tray slammed down with tremendous force. The impact reverberated through the chair frame, causing Emma's head to strike the hard surface with a sickening thud that seemed to echo through the breakfast room. Emma's immediate scream pierced the morning silence with an intensity that triggered every protective instinct in my body. The sound was different from her normal cries of hunger or discomfort. This was a cry of pain and shock that indicated genuine injury. Her face flushed red as tears streamed down her cheeks, and her entire body trembled with the force of her distress. I moved instantly to lift Emma from the high chair, my hands shaking as I examined her head for signs of serious injury. A red mark was already forming on her forehead where it had struck the tray, and I could feel a small bump beginning to develop beneath her soft skin. My medical training, limited though it was, told me that the injury was likely superficial, but the force of the impact had been substantial enough to cause legitimate concern. "Oh my God, Emma, I'm so sorry," I said, cradling her against my chest while attempting to soothe her crying with gentle rocking motions and soft whispers. Emma's crying began to subside as she responded to my comfort, but her breathing remained irregular and her small body continued to shake with residual distress. I felt her forehead carefully, checking for signs of swelling or other indicators of serious injury, while maintaining the calm demeanor that I knew was essential for her emotional recovery. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. When I looked up at Natalie, expecting to see concern and remorse for the accident, I was shocked by her reaction. Instead of the apologetic worry I anticipated, Natalie was smiling. Not the embarrassed grimace of someone who had made an unfortunate mistake, but an actual smile that seemed to indicate amusement rather than regret. "Accidents happen," Natalie said with a casual shrug that made my blood run cold. "Kids are resilient. She'll be fine." The dismissive tone of Natalie's response stunned me into momentary silence. I stared at my sister, trying to reconcile the person I thought I knew with someone who could cause injury to a baby and respond with such callous indifference. Emma was still whimpering softly against my shoulder, and the red mark on her forehead served as visible evidence of what had just occurred. "Accidents happen?" I repeated, my voice rising with disbelief and growing anger. "You slammed her head into the tray hard enough to leave a mark, and your response is that accidents happen?" Quote. Natalie's expression shifted from casual amusement to defensive irritation. "I didn't do it on purpose, Rachel. The mechanism stuck and then released suddenly. It's not like I was trying to hurt her." The explanation felt inadequate and insincere. I had used that high chair mechanism hundreds of times without incident. The release required deliberate pressure and coordination that made accidental activation unlikely. More importantly, Natalie's reaction to Emma's obvious pain suggested a disturbing lack of empathy that went far beyond simple clumsiness. Whether it was intentional or not, Emma was hurt, I said firmly, maintaining eye contact with Natalie while continuing to comfort my daughter. The appropriate response is concern and apology, not casual dismissal. Natalie's laugh was sharp and humorless. "You're being dramatic, Rachel. Children get bumps and bruises all the time. If you wrap her in bubble wrap, she'll never develop any resilience." The conversation was interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching the breakfast room. My mother appeared in the doorway, dressed in the conservative business attire that had become her standard uniform since accepting the Surgeon General appointment. Her presence immediately altered the atmosphere in the room, bringing with it the authority and competence that had made her one of the nation's most respected medical professionals. Dr. Margaret Chen Harrison possessed an innate ability to assess situations quickly and accurately, a skill that had served her throughout her medical career and proved invaluable in her current role as the country's leading advocate for public health. Her eyes moved immediately to Emma in my arms, noting her tear-stained face and distressed demeanor, then to the red mark on her forehead that was now clearly visible. "What happened here?" my mother asked, her voice carrying the calm authority that indicated serious attention to the situation. I explained the incident with clinical precision, describing Natalie's handling of the high chair, the force of the impact, Emma's immediate response, and my sister's dismissive reaction to the injury. My mother listened without interruption, her expression growing increasingly serious as the details emerged. Natalie attempted to minimize the incident, repeating her explanation about mechanical malfunction and accidental release. However, my mother's medical training and decades of experience with pediatric injuries provided her with the knowledge necessary to evaluate both the physical evidence and the behavioral dynamics that had contributed to the situation. "May I examine Emma?" my mother asked, extending her arms toward her granddaughter. Emma went willingly to her grandmother, recognizing the gentle competence that characterized all of my mother's interactions with children. My mother's examination was thorough but gentle, checking Emma's pupils for signs of concussion, palpating her skull for evidence of serious injury, and observing her behavior for indicators of neurological impact. "The injury appears superficial," my mother concluded after several minutes of careful assessment. "However, the force required to create this mark and swelling suggests impact that could have been much more serious." Natalie shifted uncomfortably under my mother's penetrating gaze. "It was an accident, Mom. These things happen when you're dealing with baby equipment that you're not familiar with." My mother's response would change the trajectory of our family relationships forever. Instead of accepting Natalie's explanation or attempting to mediate between her daughters, she reached for her phone with the deliberate movement of someone who had made a significant decision. "Accidents may happen," my mother said quietly, "but patterns of behavior that endanger children require intervention." The phone call that followed would demonstrate that when the Surgeon General of the United States believes a child is at risk, her authority extends far beyond medical advice. The person who answered her call would arrive at our house within 3 hours, carrying documents that would force our family to confront truths that had been hidden beneath the surface of polite interaction for far too long. As my mother began dialing, Natalie's casual confidence began to crack, replaced by the dawning realization that her actions had consequences that extended beyond family disapproval. The sound of my mother's voice, calm and professional as she explained the situation to someone on the other end of the call, filled the breakfast room with a tension that made it clear that nothing would ever be the same. Emma had stopped crying, but the red mark on her forehead remained as evidence of what had occurred. In the growing silence that followed my mother's phone call, I realized that this moment represented more than a simple accident or family disagreement. This was the moment when our family's carefully maintained facade would be stripped away, revealing truths about protection, accountability, and the lengths to which a mother will go to ensure her grandchild's safety. The silence that followed my mother's phone call stretched through the breakfast room like a living thing, thick with implications that none of us were prepared to acknowledge. Dr. Margaret Chen Harrison stood with her back to us, still holding her phone, her shoulders rigid with the kind of tension that comes from making decisions that will irrevocably alter family dynamics. The morning light that had seemed so warm and welcoming an hour earlier now felt harsh and unforgiving, illuminating the red mark on Emma's forehead with clinical precision. Natalie broke the silence first, her voice carrying a forced lightness that failed to mask her growing anxiety. "Mom, surely you're not taking this as seriously as Rachel is making it seem. Emma is perfectly fine. Look at her, she's already stopped crying." Emma had indeed calmed down, but she remained unusually subdued in my arms, occasionally touching the tender spot on her forehead with tentative fingers. Her normal, exuberant personality seemed dampened, replaced by a watchful wariness that broke my heart. At 6 months old, she could not understand what had happened, but some instinctive part of her recognized that the world had become less safe than it had been an hour earlier. My mother turned around slowly, her expression revealing nothing of her internal emotional state. Years of medical practice had taught her to maintain professional composure, even when dealing with situations that challenged her personally. However, those who knew her well could detect the subtle signs of barely contained anger in the set of her jaw and the deliberate precision of her movements. "The person I spoke with will be arriving within 3 hours," my mother said, her voice maintaining the calm authority that had become second nature during her tenure as Surgeon General. "Until then, I suggest we all consider very carefully how we want to proceed with this conversation." Natalie's facade of casual confidence began to crack visibly. "What person? Mom, you can't be serious about involving outsiders in what was clearly an accident between family members." I found myself studying my sister with fresh eyes, noticing details that I had previously overlooked or dismissed as unimportant. The slight tremor in her hands that I had attributed to caffeine consumption. The way her eyes never quite met mine when she spoke about Emma. The subtle changes in her behavior patterns during recent visits that I had rationalized as work-related stress. The realization that my concerns about Natalie's interactions with Emma might be more serious than I had acknowledged filled me with a complex mixture of guilt, fear, and protective rage. As Emma's mother, my primary responsibility was ensuring her safety and well-being. If I had failed to recognize genuine threats because they came from within our own family, then I had failed in the most fundamental aspect of parenthood. "Natalie," I said carefully, "I need you to help me understand something. This morning's incident aside, I've noticed that you seem uncomfortable around Emma. You rarely hold her for more than a few minutes, and when you do interact with her, it feels forced rather than natural." Natalie's defensive response was immediate and sharp. "Not everyone needs to be obsessively attached to babies the way you are, Rachel. Some of us have other priorities and interests beyond diaper changes and feeding schedules." The comment stung because it touched on insecurities I had been grappling with since Emma's birth. The transition from successful career woman to full-time mother had challenged my sense of identity in ways I was still processing. However, Natalie's dismissive tone suggested something deeper than simple lack of interest in childcare responsibilities. My mother intervened before I could respond, her medical training evident in her systematic approach to gathering information. "Natalie, I'd like you to describe exactly what happened when you attempted to release the high chair tray." Natalie's account was halting and inconsistent, changing details with each repetition. She claimed unfamiliarity with the mechanism, then mentioned having helped with the same chair during previous visits. She described the tray as sticking, then releasing suddenly, but could not explain why her initial pressure had been sufficient to cause such forceful impact. As Natalie spoke, I found myself remembering other incidents that had seemed minor at the time but now appeared more significant in light of the morning's events. The time Natalie had claimed to accidentally knock over Emma's bottle, spilling formula across the carpet. The afternoon when she had startled Emma awake from a nap by slamming a door, then insisted the baby needed to learn to sleep through normal household sounds. The pattern that emerged was subtle but consistent, a series of actions that caused distress or discomfort to Emma while maintaining plausible deniability about intentional harm. Each incident could be explained away as accident or misunderstanding, but together they suggested a troubling dynamic that I had been reluctant to acknowledge. Emma began to fuss in my arms, and I realized that the tension in the room was affecting her emotional state. Babies are remarkably sensitive to the emotional atmosphere around them, and the stress radiating from all three adults was undoubtedly contributing to her continued distress. "I'm going to take Emma upstairs for her nap," I announced, needing space to process what was happening while ensuring my daughter's immediate comfort and safety. My mother nodded approval. "That's a good idea. When you come back down, we need to discuss some things that should have been addressed much earlier." The nursery felt like a sanctuary after the charged atmosphere of the breakfast room. Emma's familiar surroundings, the soft mobile rotating slowly above her crib, the gentle music box that played lullabies, the carefully arranged books and toys that represented my hopes for her future, provided a sense of normalcy that helped calm both of us. As I changed Emma's diaper and prepared her for sleep, I found myself examining every aspect of her physical condition with heightened awareness. The bump on her forehead had grown more pronounced, and touching it caused her to pull away with obvious discomfort. The injury was indeed superficial, as my mother had determined, but it served as tangible evidence of my failure to protect my child from harm. Emma settled into sleep with unusual difficulty, her normal routine disrupted by the morning's trauma. I sat beside her crib long after her breathing had deepened into the steady rhythm of infant slumber, using the quiet time to confront the magnitude of what was happening to our family. The phone call my mother had made would bring representatives from Child Protective Services to our home. The woman who served as the nation's highest-ranking medical officer had determined that her own daughter posed a sufficient threat to her granddaughter to warrant official intervention. The implications of that decision extended far beyond the immediate incident to encompass fundamental questions about family loyalty, professional ethics, and the responsibility to protect vulnerable individuals. When I finally returned to the main floor of the house, I found my mother in her home office, a space that reflected both her medical background and her current governmental responsibilities. Diplomas and awards covered one wall, while the opposite wall displayed photographs from various official functions and ceremonies. The room represented a lifetime of achievement and service, but today it felt like a tribunal where difficult truths would finally be acknowledged. Natalie was nowhere to be seen, and my mother explained that she had retreated to her bedroom, claiming the need to respond to urgent work communications. However, the explanation felt like avoidance, rather than genuine professional obligation. "Rachel, please sit down," my mother said, gesturing toward the comfortable chair across from her desk. "We need to discuss some observations I've made about Natalie's behavior that have been concerning me for several months." The conversation that followed revealed a pattern of incidents and interactions that my mother had been documenting with the systematic attention to detail that characterized her professional practice. Natalie's visits had become increasingly problematic, marked by subtle but consistent behaviors that suggested underlying psychological instability. "I should have spoken with you about this earlier," my mother admitted, her professional composure finally showing cracks of maternal guilt. "I hoped that whatever Natalie was going through would resolve itself without requiring intervention. I was wrong to prioritize family harmony over Emma's safety." The revelation that my mother had been harboring concerns about Natalie's mental state and potential danger to Emma forced me to confront my own role in enabling problematic behavior. I had noticed the warning signs but had chosen to rationalize them rather than investigating further or setting appropriate boundaries. "What exactly have you observed?" I asked, though part of me dreaded learning the full extent of information that had been withheld from me. My mother opened a file folder that contained handwritten notes, organized chronologically and documented with the precision of a medical case study. The entries described incidents I remembered and others I had not witnessed, creating a comprehensive picture of escalating concerning behavior. The documentation included Natalie's increasingly erratic sleep patterns during visits, often wandering the house during night hours when everyone else was asleep. Security personnel had reported finding her in the nursery on multiple occasions, standing over Emma's crib for extended periods without apparent purpose. Other entries described Natalie's strange fascination with Emma's medical appointments and development milestones, asking detailed questions about the baby's physical capabilities and psychological development that seemed to exceed normal aunt-like interest. She had specifically inquired about Emma's pain responses and emotional resilience in ways that now seemed ominous rather than simply curious. "I've been consulting with colleagues about the behavioral patterns Natalie has been displaying," my mother continued. "The consensus is that she may be experiencing a form of psychological crisis related to her own unfulfilled desires for motherhood, complicated by professional stress and possible substance abuse issues." The mention of substance abuse shocked me into silence. I had not observed any obvious signs of drug or alcohol problems, but Natalie's increasingly erratic behavior and emotional volatility could certainly be explained by chemical dependency issues. "The incident this morning represents an escalation that cannot be ignored," my mother said firmly. "Whether the harm to Emma was intentional or accidental is less important than the pattern of behavior that created the conditions for that harm to occur." The sound of a car door slamming in the driveway interrupted our conversation. Through the office window, I could see a modest sedan parking behind my mother's official vehicle. Two individuals emerged from the car, a middle-aged woman carrying a briefcase and a younger man with a tablet computer, both dressed in the conservative business attire that suggested official capacity. "They're here," my mother said unnecessarily, rising from her desk with the composed dignity that had characterized her response to every challenge throughout her distinguished career. The representatives from Child Protective Services were professional and thorough in their approach to evaluating the situation. Linda Morrison, the senior caseworker, possessed the kind of calm competence that comes from years of experience dealing with family crises involving child welfare concerns. Her colleague, James Chen, served as both witness and documentation specialist, recording details that would become part of the official case file. Natalie's reaction to their arrival was immediate and dramatic. She emerged from her bedroom in a state of barely controlled panic, demanding to know why strangers were being allowed to invade our family's privacy over what she continued to characterize as a minor accident. "This is completely inappropriate," Natalie protested, her voice rising with each word. You're treating me like some kind of criminal when all I did was help my sister with baby equipment that I wasn't familiar with. Linda Morrison's response was measured and professional. Ms. Harrison, we're here to conduct a standard welfare check based on information provided by a mandated reporter. This is not an accusation or criminal proceeding, but rather an assessment to ensure that appropriate safety measures are in place. The formal language and official procedures transformed our family home into something resembling a courtroom, where relationships and behaviors would be examined under the harsh light of legal scrutiny. The comfortable familiarity of our domestic environment felt violated by the presence of strangers who held the authority to make determinations about our family's future. Emma woke from her nap during the initial phase of the investigation, her cries echoing through the house with timing that seemed almost orchestrated to emphasize the seriousness of the situation. When I brought her downstairs, the red mark on her forehead was immediately noted and photographed by James Chen, creating official documentation of the injury that had prompted the investigation. Natalie's behavior during the interview process revealed aspects of her personality that I had never previously witnessed. Her responses to questions became increasingly defensive and irrational, shifting between attempts at charm and outbursts of anger that undermined her credibility. The composed professional persona that had served her well in her advertising career completely disintegrated under pressure. Linda Morrison's questions were designed to assess both the immediate safety concerns and the broader family dynamics that might contribute to ongoing risk. She interviewed each family member separately, allowing for honest communication without fear of immediate confrontation or retaliation. During my private interview, I found myself acknowledging concerns and observations that I had been reluctant to voice even to myself. The process of articulating my worries about Natalie's behavior made them feel more real and urgent than they had when they existed only as vague unease in the back of my mind. The most important thing is Emma's safety, Linda Morrison reminded me as our interview concluded. Whatever family dynamics or personal relationships might be affected by this process, your daughter's well-being must be the primary consideration. The investigation would continue for several hours, transforming our Tuesday morning from routine domestic tranquility into a formal examination of family fitness and child safety. The foundation of trust and assumed good intentions that had supported our family relationships was being systematically dismantled, revealing uncomfortable truths that would require fundamental changes in how we related to one another. As the afternoon wore on, it became clear that the phone call my mother had made would indeed change everything, not just for the immediate situation but for the future of our family's ability to function as a cohesive unit. The depth of despair that settled over our household was not just about the current crisis, but about the recognition that we had been living with dangers we had refused to acknowledge, and that protection would require sacrifices none of us had anticipated. The investigation by Child Protective Services concluded at approximately 4 o'clock that afternoon, leaving our family with a comprehensive safety plan that would govern our interactions for the foreseeable future. Linda Morrison presented the official documentation with the professional gravity that such circumstances demanded, her recommendations carrying the weight of legal mandate rather than mere suggestion. Based on our assessment, we are implementing supervised visitation requirements for Ms. Natalie Harrison, Linda Morrison announced, reading from the formal document that would restructure our family dynamics. Any interaction with the minor child must occur in the presence of an approved, supervising adult, with mandatory psychological evaluation, to be completed within 30 days. The clinical language of the safety plan could not diminish the profound impact of its requirements on our family structure. Natalie's face had grown progressively paler throughout the afternoon, as the magnitude of the investigation became apparent. Her attempts to minimize the morning's incident and characterize the official response as overreaction had failed to persuade caseworkers whose professional experience enabled them to recognize concerning behavioral patterns. Dr. Margaret Chen Harrison accepted the safety plan documentation with the composed dignity that characterized her response to all professional obligations. Her position as Surgeon General required her to demonstrate exemplary compliance with child welfare protocols, particularly when those protocols affected her own family circumstances. The irony of her situation was not lost on any of us. The nation's highest-ranking advocate for child health and safety was now subject to government oversight regarding her own granddaughter's welfare. I want to be completely clear about the expectations moving forward. My mother addressed both Natalie and me with the authoritative tone that had become second nature during her tenure in public service. Emma's safety is the paramount consideration in all decisions regarding family interactions. Personal feelings and relationship dynamics are secondary to that fundamental responsibility. Natalie's response was a mixture of defiance and desperation that revealed the depth of her psychological distress. This is completely disproportionate to what happened. I made one mistake with unfamiliar equipment, and now I'm being treated like some kind of dangerous criminal. The whole situation is insane. The characterization of the morning's events as a simple mistake demonstrated Natalie's continued inability to acknowledge the serious nature of her actions or their impact on Emma's well-being. Her persistent minimization of the incident, despite overwhelming evidence of its significance, suggested psychological mechanisms that extended beyond normal defensive reactions to embarrassment or criticism. James Chen completed his documentation with methodical precision, photographing the nursery environment, recording measurements and observations that would become part of the official case file. The transformation of our private family space into the subject of governmental investigation felt surreal and invasive, yet I recognized the necessity of such thoroughness in protecting vulnerable children. After the caseworkers departed, our family faced the challenge of processing what had occurred and determining how to move forward within the constraints of the new safety requirements. The comfortable assumptions that had previously governed our relationships no longer applied, replaced by formal protocols designed to prevent further incidents. My husband David arrived home from his law practice to find our household in a state of upheaval that required immediate explanation and strategic consideration. His legal expertise proved invaluable in interpreting the documentation and understanding the implications of the safety plan for our family's future interactions. The psychological evaluation requirement is standard procedure in cases involving potential mental health factors. Quote, David explained after reviewing the caseworker reports. The results will determine whether additional interventions or restrictions are necessary. Natalie's reaction to the mention of psychological evaluation was immediate and volatile. I don't need psychiatric treatment because I had an accident with baby equipment. This whole thing is a massive overreaction that's going to destroy my professional reputation. The concern about professional reputation revealed priorities that seemed misaligned with the gravity of the situation. Natalie's focus on potential career consequences rather than Emma's welfare or family healing suggested a fundamental disconnect from the values that should guide family relationships. David's legal perspective provided clarity about the procedural aspects of our situation while also highlighting the serious implications for all family members. Cooperation with the safety plan requirements is mandatory, not optional. Resistance or non-compliance could result in escalation of interventions that would be far more restrictive than current measures. The evening hours that followed were marked by difficult conversations about accountability, responsibility, and the steps necessary to restore family trust and safety. My mother's position as a public health leader informed her systematic approach to addressing the crisis, treating family dysfunction with the same evidence-based methodology she applied to population health challenges. We need to understand that this situation developed over time rather than emerging suddenly. My mother observed with clinical detachment. The incident this morning was a manifestation of underlying issues that require comprehensive intervention. The recognition that warning signs had been present but unaddressed forced all of us to examine our own roles in enabling problematic behavior. My tendency to rationalize Natalie's concerning actions, rather than confronting them directly, had contributed to the escalation that ultimately endangered Emma's safety. David suggested engaging professional family counseling services to supplement the required psychological evaluation and provide structured support for rebuilding healthy relationships. His recommendation reflected both legal wisdom and personal commitment to protecting our family unit while addressing the underlying factors that had created dangerous conditions. Family therapy can provide neutral ground for processing these issues and developing strategies for moving forward constructively, David explained. It also demonstrates proactive commitment to addressing the problems rather than simply complying with minimum requirements. Natalie's resistance to therapeutic intervention was predictable but disappointing. Her insistence that she required no professional assistance and that the entire situation represented unjustified persecution revealed psychological rigidity that would complicate any meaningful resolution. I'm not going to sit in some therapist's office and pretend that helping with a high chair makes me a dangerous person, Natalie declared with the kind of absolutist thinking that had characterized her responses throughout the crisis. The refusal to acknowledge the legitimacy of professional intervention suggested psychological defense mechanisms that would require skilled therapeutic expertise to address effectively. Natalie's inability to recognize the connection between her behavior and its consequences represented a fundamental barrier to meaningful change. My mother's response to Natalie's resistance was measured but firm. Professional evaluation is not optional under the current circumstances. Compliance with all safety plan requirements is necessary for maintaining any family contact privileges. The conversation revealed the extent to which our family relationships had been fundamentally altered by the morning's events and the subsequent investigation. The informal trust and assumed good intentions that had previously characterized our interactions were replaced by formal requirements and supervised oversight. Emma remained blissfully unaware of the adult tensions surrounding her safety and well-being. Her evening routine proceeded normally, with dinner, bath time, and bedtime stories, providing comforting stability amid the household upheaval. Her resilience and adaptability served as a reminder of the ultimate purpose underlying all the difficult decisions and painful conversations. As I tucked Emma into her crib that night, the red mark on her forehead had begun to fade, but remained visible as evidence of the day's trauma. Her peaceful sleep contrasted sharply with the emotional turmoil affecting the adults responsible for her protection and care. The search for solutions to our family crisis would require sustained effort and professional guidance over an extended period. The immediate safety measures provided essential protection for Emma, while creating space for addressing the underlying issues that had contributed to the dangerous situation. David and I spent the late evening hours discussing practical arrangements for implementing the supervised visitation requirements while maintaining some semblance of normal family function. The logistics of ensuring appropriate supervision for all interactions between Natalie and Emma would require careful coordination and clear communication among all family members. We need to approach this systematically rather than hoping things will somehow resolve themselves. David advised with the strategic thinking that had made him successful in complex legal negotiations. Clear expectations and consistent enforcement will be essential for creating sustainable improvements. The recognition that sustainable change would require more than good intentions or family loyalty represented a crucial shift in our approach to the crisis. Previous attempts to address Natalie's concerning behavior through informal family discussions had proven inadequate for protecting Emma's safety. My mother's professional background provided valuable perspective on the change process and realistic timelines for meaningful improvement. Behavioral change requires sustained intervention and consistent accountability measures. Quick fixes are rarely effective for addressing complex psychological issues. The psychological evaluation scheduled for Natalie would provide professional assessment of her mental health status and recommendations for appropriate treatment interventions. The results would determine whether current safety measures were sufficient or whether additional restrictions would be necessary. Natalie's cooperation with the evaluation process would be crucial for demonstrating willingness to address the factors that had contributed to Emma's injury. Her attitude toward professional intervention would serve as an indicator of her commitment to making necessary changes versus merely complying with minimum requirements. The family therapy sessions recommended by David would provide structured opportunities for processing the trauma and rebuilding trust among family members. Professional facilitation would be essential for navigating the complex emotions and competing perspectives that had emerged during the crisis. Therapy isn't about assigning blame or relitigating past events. I explained to Natalie during our final conversation of the evening. It's about understanding what happened and developing better strategies for protecting Emma while maintaining family relationships. Natalie's response revealed continued resistance to acknowledging the legitimacy of professional intervention. I don't see why we need strangers telling us how to be a family. We can figure this out ourselves if everyone would just stop overreacting. The persistent minimization of the situation and refusal to engage with professional resources suggested that meaningful change would require external motivation rather than internal recognition of the need for improvement. The mandatory nature of the psychological evaluation would provide necessary accountability for beginning the therapeutic process. The search for solutions had revealed the complexity of our family crisis and the comprehensive interventions that would be required for meaningful resolution. The immediate safety measures provided essential protection for Emma, while creating opportunities for addressing the underlying factors that had contributed to the dangerous situation. The path forward would require patience, professional guidance, and sustained commitment to prioritizing Emma's well-being over family harmony or individual comfort. The transformation of our family relationships would be neither quick nor easy, but the alternative of continued dysfunction posed unacceptable risks to an innocent child. As I reflected on the day's events and the challenges ahead, I recognized that the crisis had forced our family to confront fundamental questions about responsibility, accountability, and the nature of unconditional love. The answers to those questions would determine whether we could rebuild trust and safety, or whether protective measures would require permanent changes to our family structure. The morning's traumatic incident had initiated a process of examination and intervention that would ultimately strengthen our family's ability to protect its most vulnerable members. The search for solutions had begun with professional assessment and safety planning, but the real work of healing and transformation lay ahead in the weeks and months to come. 3 days after the Child Protective Services investigation transformed our family dynamics, an unexpected phone call arrived that would fundamentally alter our approach to addressing the crisis. The caller identified herself as Dr. Sarah Coleman, a pediatric psychologist specializing in family trauma and infant development, who had been following the case through professional channels connected to my mother's position as Surgeon General. Dr. Coleman's credentials were impressive, and her reputation within the child development community was exemplary. She had spent 15 years developing innovative therapeutic interventions for families experiencing crisis situations involving infant safety and parental mental health challenges. Her research had been published in leading medical journals, and her clinical practice had successfully addressed hundreds of cases similar to our family's circumstances. Dr. Chen Harrison, I hope you will forgive the unsolicited contact. Dr. Coleman began with professional courtesy that immediately established her credibility. However, after reviewing the preliminary reports regarding your family's situation, I believe there may be opportunities for intervention that extend beyond standard protective protocols. Quote, my mother's response reflected both professional interest and personal desperation for solutions that could preserve family relationships while ensuring Emma's safety. The standard interventions recommended by Child Protective Services provided necessary immediate protection, but offered limited guidance for rebuilding trust and addressing underlying psychological factors. I would welcome any insights you might offer, my mother replied, with the cautious optimism of someone who had exhausted conventional approaches to a complex problem. We are committed to exploring all viable options for resolution. Dr. Coleman explained that her interest in our case had been prompted by similarities to a research study she was conducting on sibling rivalry manifestations in adult family systems. Her preliminary analysis suggested that Natalie's behavior toward Emma might represent a complex psychological phenomenon related to displaced maternal instincts and unresolved developmental trauma. The pattern you have described suggests what we term displaced maternal aggression, a condition where individuals with unfulfilled parenting desires unconsciously direct hostility toward children who represent what they cannot have. Dr. Coleman explained with the clinical precision that characterized expert diagnosis. The concept of displaced maternal aggression provided a theoretical framework for understanding Natalie's seemingly inexplicable behavior toward an innocent infant. Rather than simple cruelty or indifference, her actions might represent unconscious psychological mechanisms related to her own unfulfilled desires for motherhood and family connection. Dr. Coleman's research had identified specific therapeutic interventions that could address the underlying psychological factors while providing practical strategies for rebuilding safe family relationships. Her approach combined individual therapy for the affected adult with family systems work that addressed the broader relational dynamics contributing to the problematic behavior. The most encouraging aspect of your situation is the immediate intervention that prevented escalation, Dr. Coleman observed. Many families experience repeated incidents before seeking professional assistance, which creates deeper trauma and more resistant psychological patterns. The recognition that our family's quick response to the crisis had actually created opportunities for more effective intervention provided hope that meaningful resolution might be achievable. Dr. Coleman's optimistic assessment contrasted sharply with the pessimistic outlook that had characterized our discussions since the investigation concluded. Dr. Coleman proposed a comprehensive treatment approach that would address multiple levels of the family system simultaneously. Individual therapy for Natalie would focus on the psychological factors contributing to her displaced aggression, while family sessions would work on rebuilding trust and establishing healthy interaction patterns with Emma. The key to successful intervention is addressing both the individual psychological factors and the family system dynamics that enable or discourage problematic behavior, Dr. Coleman explained. Neither individual therapy nor family intervention alone is sufficient for creating sustainable change. The treatment plan Dr. Coleman outlined was intensive and would require significant commitment from all family members over an extended period. However, her track record of success with similar cases provided realistic hope for meaningful improvement rather than merely managing ongoing risk. My mother's professional background enabled her to evaluate Dr. Coleman's proposed interventions with sophisticated understanding of therapeutic methodology and evidence-based practice. The treatment plan aligned with best practices in family trauma intervention while incorporating innovative elements that addressed the specific dynamics of our situation. Dr. Coleman, what would be the realistic timeline for seeing meaningful progress with this approach? My mother inquired with the practical focus that characterized her approach to all complex challenges. Dr. Coleman's response reflected both professional honesty and therapeutic optimism. Initial stabilization typically occurs within 6 to 8 weeks, with substantial progress visible within 3 to 4 months. However, complete resolution and family reintegration usually requires 8 to 12 months of sustained intervention. The extended timeline for meaningful change required recalibrating our expectations and preparing for a lengthy process of reconstruction rather than quick resolution. However, Dr. Coleman's systematic approach provided concrete milestones and measurable objectives that would allow us to track progress and adjust interventions as needed. The conversation with Dr. Coleman continued for over an hour as she gathered detailed information about our family history, relationship patterns, and specific incidents that had contributed to the current crisis. Her questions revealed the depth of analysis required for developing effective therapeutic interventions tailored to our particular circumstances. Dr. Coleman's assessment process included review of medical records, family photographs, and detailed interviews with all family members to understand the complex dynamics that had created conditions for Emma's injury. Her thoroughness impressed my mother and provided confidence that any treatment recommendations would be based on comprehensive understanding rather than superficial assumptions. I would like to meet with each family member individually before developing final treatment recommendations, Dr. Coleman proposed. Understanding each person's perspective and psychological state is essential for creating interventions that address root causes, rather than merely managing symptoms. The individual assessment process would begin with Natalie, whose cooperation would be crucial for any meaningful therapeutic progress. Dr. Coleman's expertise in working with resistant clients provided hope that even Natalie's defensive attitude might be addressed through skilled therapeutic engagement. Many individuals in similar circumstances initially resist intervention because they perceive it as criticism or punishment rather than assistance, Dr. Coleman observed. Reframing therapeutic engagement as empowerment rather than correction often facilitates more productive participation. The reframing of therapeutic intervention as empowerment rather than punishment represented a significant shift from the adversarial atmosphere that had characterized family discussions since the investigation. Dr. Coleman's approach emphasized healing and growth rather than blame and restriction. Following the phone conversation with Dr. Coleman, our family gathered to discuss the proposed therapeutic intervention and determine whether to pursue this comprehensive approach to addressing our crisis. The discussion revealed varying levels of enthusiasm and resistance that would need to be addressed before beginning any treatment process. David's legal perspective provided valuable insight into the potential benefits of engaging with Dr. Coleman's specialized intervention. Voluntary participation in therapeutic services demonstrates proactive commitment to addressing underlying issues, and could influence future decisions regarding safety plan modifications. The recognition that therapeutic engagement could positively impact the legal requirements governing our family interactions provided additional motivation for pursuing Dr. Coleman's comprehensive treatment approach. Active participation in evidence-based interventions would demonstrate good faith efforts to address the factors that had endangered Emma's safety. My mother's professional assessment of Dr. Coleman's credentials and proposed interventions was overwhelmingly positive. Dr. Coleman's research and clinical experience represent the highest standards in family trauma intervention. Her approach addresses both individual and systemic factors that contribute to problematic behavior. The endorsement from someone with my mother's professional standing and expertise provided strong validation for pursuing Dr. Coleman's specialized services. Her systematic approach to evaluation and intervention aligned with best practices in pediatric psychology and family systems therapy. Natalie's initial reaction to the proposed therapeutic intervention was predictably resistant, reflecting her continued denial regarding the seriousness of her behavior and its impact on Emma's well-being. However, Dr. Coleman's reputation and specialized expertise in similar cases provided compelling reasons for cooperation even from reluctant participants. "I still think this whole situation is being blown out of proportion," Natalie stated with characteristic defensiveness. "But if everyone insists on treating me like I have some kind of mental illness, I suppose I'll go through the motions of therapy." The grudging agreement to participate in therapeutic intervention represented progress, even if Natalie's attitude remained problematic. Dr. Coleman's experience with resistant clients suggested that initial reluctance often diminished as therapeutic engagement progressed and individuals began experiencing benefits from professional assistance. The scheduling of individual assessment sessions with Dr. Coleman required coordination among multiple family members and careful consideration of supervision requirements established by the Child Protective Services Safety Plan. Natalie's interactions with Emma remained restricted to supervised visits, which would continue until therapeutic progress demonstrated reduced risk. Dr. Coleman's office was located in a professional medical complex that specialized in pediatric and family mental health services. The environment was designed to be welcoming and non-threatening, while maintaining the clinical standards necessary for effective therapeutic intervention. The initial assessment session with Natalie was scheduled for the following Tuesday, providing several days for preparation and continued discussion about the therapeutic process and its potential benefits. Dr. Coleman's systematic approach to evaluation would establish baseline psychological functioning and identify specific therapeutic targets. The assessment process is designed to be collaborative rather than evaluative, Dr. Coleman had explained during our phone conversation. The goal is understanding and empowerment rather than diagnosis and criticism. The collaborative approach to assessment represented a significant departure from the adversarial atmosphere that had characterized interactions with Child Protective Services investigators. Dr. Coleman's emphasis on partnership and shared problem-solving created opportunities for genuine therapeutic engagement. Emma's development continued to progress normally, despite the family upheaval surrounding her safety and protection. Her resilience and adaptability provided hope that the trauma of the high chair incident would not create lasting developmental impacts if appropriate therapeutic interventions addressed the family dynamics that had created dangerous conditions. The red mark on Emma's forehead had completely faded within a week of the incident, leaving no visible evidence of the trauma that had initiated our family's transformation. However, the psychological and relational impacts of that morning would require sustained therapeutic attention to prevent future occurrences. Dr. Coleman's specialized expertise in infant development and family trauma provided assurance that Emma's ongoing well-being would be carefully monitored throughout the therapeutic process. Her approach integrated child development principles with family systems intervention to ensure that treatment benefited all family members rather than focusing solely on the identified problem individual. The unexpected connection with Dr. Coleman represented a turning point in our family's approach to addressing the crisis precipitated by Natalie's behavior toward Emma. Rather than simply managing risk through protective restrictions, we now had access to evidence-based interventions that could address underlying causes and rebuild healthy family relationships. The opportunity for comprehensive therapeutic intervention provided hope that our family could emerge from this crisis stronger and more resilient than before. Dr. Coleman's systematic approach to healing offered concrete strategies for transformation rather than merely coping with ongoing dysfunction. As we prepared for the beginning of therapeutic intervention, our family faced the prospect of intensive self-examination and sustained commitment to change. The work ahead would be challenging and uncomfortable, but Dr. Coleman's expertise provided confidence that meaningful progress was achievable, with appropriate professional guidance and family cooperation. The unexpected ally that Dr. Coleman represented had emerged at precisely the moment when our family needed specialized expertise and hope for resolution. Her intervention would prove crucial for transforming our crisis into an opportunity for genuine healing and growth that would benefit all family members, especially Emma, whose safety and well-being remained our paramount concern. The Tuesday morning appointment with Dr. Coleman marked the beginning of what would prove to be the most transformative period in our family's history. The professional medical complex where her practice was located reflected the sophisticated approach she brought to family trauma intervention, with waiting areas designed to reduce anxiety and treatment rooms equipped with state-of-the-art assessment technology. Natalie's demeanor during the drive to the appointment revealed the internal conflict she was experiencing between defensive resistance and reluctant recognition that professional intervention might be necessary. Her silence during the 30-minute journey contrasted sharply with her usual tendency to fill uncomfortable spaces with conversation, suggesting deeper psychological processing than she was willing to acknowledge openly. Dr. Coleman's initial greeting demonstrated the skilled therapeutic presence that had earned her recognition as a leading expert in family crisis intervention. Her manner conveyed both professional authority and genuine warmth, creating an atmosphere that encouraged honest communication while maintaining appropriate clinical boundaries. "Thank you for coming today, Natalie." Dr. Coleman began with the kind of respectful directness that immediately established her competence without creating defensiveness. "I understand this situation has been challenging for everyone involved, and I appreciate your willingness to engage in this process." The individual assessment session lasted 2 hours and covered comprehensive psychological, social, and medical history that would inform subsequent therapeutic interventions. Dr. Coleman's questioning technique revealed information that had never been discussed within our family context, providing insights into developmental factors that had contributed to Natalie's current psychological state. The assessment revealed that Natalie had experienced significant trauma during her own childhood that had never been adequately addressed through professional intervention. A series of medical procedures during adolescence had resulted in complications that eliminated her ability to conceive children naturally, a loss that she had grieved privately without family support or therapeutic assistance. Many individuals who experience reproductive trauma develop complex emotional responses to children in family situations. Dr. Coleman explained during the feedback session that included our entire family. The grief and loss associated with infertility can manifest in unexpected ways, particularly when triggered by proximity to healthy infants. The revelation that Natalie's behavior toward Emma might be connected to her own unresolved reproductive trauma provided a psychological framework for understanding actions that had previously seemed inexplicable. Rather than simple cruelty or indifference, her displaced aggression represented unconscious processing of profound personal loss. Dr. Coleman's assessment also identified specific therapeutic interventions that could address the underlying trauma, while developing healthy coping mechanisms for managing the emotional triggers associated with infant care. Her treatment plan integrated individual therapy with family sessions designed to rebuild trust and establish safe interaction patterns. The most encouraging aspect of this assessment is the identification of treatable psychological factors. Dr. Coleman observed with professional optimism that provided hope for meaningful resolution. Natalie's behavior patterns suggest reactive responses to unresolved trauma, rather than inherent personality disorders or character defects. The distinction between reactive trauma responses and fundamental character issues was crucial for determining appropriate therapeutic interventions and realistic expectations for improvement. Dr. Coleman's assessment suggested that comprehensive treatment could address the underlying factors contributing to dangerous behavior while preserving family relationships. The treatment plan Dr. Coleman presented required intensive therapeutic engagement over an extended period, including twice-weekly individual sessions for Natalie, weekly family therapy sessions, and specialized training in infant development and safe caregiving practices. The comprehensive approach addressed both psychological healing and practical skill development necessary for rebuilding family trust. Sustainable change requires addressing multiple levels of functioning simultaneously. Dr. Coleman explained with the systematic thinking that characterized her approach to complex family interventions. Individual psychological healing must be combined with family system changes and practical skill development to create lasting improvement. The intensive nature of the proposed treatment plan required significant commitment from all family members and substantial financial investment that would strain our resources despite our relatively privileged economic circumstances. However, the alternative of permanent family fragmentation and ongoing safety concerns made the investment both necessary and worthwhile. Natalie's response to Dr. Coleman's assessment and treatment recommendations revealed the first signs of genuine psychological breakthrough since the crisis began. The professional validation of her underlying trauma and the systematic approach to addressing contributing factors created opportunities for hope and healing that had not previously existed. I never realized that my medical problems might be connected to how I feel around Emma, Natalie admitted with the kind of vulnerable honesty that had been absent from all previous family discussions. I thought I had dealt with the infertility issues years ago, but maybe I was just avoiding them. The acknowledgement that unresolved trauma might be influencing her current behavior represented a crucial shift from defensive denial to therapeutic engagement. Dr. Coleman's skilled assessment had created conditions for Natalie to recognize connections between past experiences and present challenges without feeling attacked or criticized. The family therapy component of the treatment plan would address the broader relational dynamics that had enabled problematic behavior to escalate without appropriate intervention. Dr. Coleman's assessment identified communication patterns and family roles that had inadvertently contributed to the dangerous situation by discouraging honest discussion of concerning behaviors. Family systems often develop implicit rules about what can and cannot be discussed openly. Dr. Coleman observed with clinical insight that illuminated previously unrecognized patterns in our relationships. These unspoken agreements can prevent necessary interventions when individual family members begin experiencing psychological distress. The recognition that our family's tendency to avoid conflict and maintain surface harmony had actually enabled dangerous behavior provided important insights for developing healthier communication patterns. Dr. Coleman's intervention would focus on creating safe spaces for honest discussion while establishing clear boundaries regarding acceptable behavior. My mother's professional background enabled her to fully appreciate the sophistication of Dr. Coleman's assessment and treatment planning. The intervention strategies aligned with evidence-based practices in family therapy, while incorporating innovative elements specifically designed to address the unique dynamics of our situation. Dr. Coleman's approach represents the highest standards of clinical practice. My mother observed with the professional respect that characterized her evaluation of expert colleagues. Her systematic methodology provides concrete strategies for addressing underlying issues while maintaining focus on Emma's safety and well-being. The endorsement from someone with my mother's professional standing and expertise provided additional validation for pursuing Dr. Coleman's comprehensive treatment approach. Her confidence in the proposed interventions helped overcome remaining family resistance to engaging with intensive therapeutic processes. David's legal perspective highlighted the potential benefits of voluntary therapeutic engagement for addressing the ongoing Child Protective Services oversight of our family situation. Active participation in evidence-based interventions would demonstrate proactive commitment to resolving underlying issues rather than merely complying with minimum safety requirements. Courts and child welfare agencies view voluntary therapeutic engagement very favorably when evaluating family reunification potential. David explained with the strategic thinking that had made him successful in complex legal negotiations. Dr. Coleman's documented expertise and systematic approach provide credible evidence of commitment to meaningful change. The recognition that therapeutic progress could influence the legal restrictions governing our family interactions provided additional motivation for pursuing Dr. Coleman's comprehensive treatment plan. Successful completion of therapeutic interventions could lead to modification of supervision requirements and eventual restoration of normal family functioning. The scheduling of regular therapeutic sessions required careful coordination with existing family obligations and professional responsibilities. Dr. Coleman's practice offered flexible appointment times that accommodated the complex demands of my mother's position as Surgeon General, while ensuring consistent therapeutic engagement. The first family therapy session was scheduled for the following week, providing time for Natalie to begin individual therapeutic work before engaging with broader family dynamics. Dr. Coleman's systematic approach to intervention ensured that each component of treatment built upon previous progress, rather than overwhelming participants with competing demands. Emma's continued development and adaptation provided hope that the family crisis would not create lasting negative impacts on her psychological and emotional growth. Dr. Coleman's expertise in infant development ensured that Emma's needs would be carefully considered throughout the therapeutic process. Infants are remarkably resilient when provided with consistent, safe caregiving relationships. Dr. Coleman observed with professional reassurance that addressed our concerns about potential long-term impacts. The immediate intervention to protect Emma and address family dynamics actually creates optimal conditions for healthy development. The therapeutic process would include regular assessments of Emma's developmental progress and adjustment to ensure that family interventions were supporting rather than disrupting her continued growth. Dr. Coleman's comprehensive approach considered the needs of all family members, while maintaining primary focus on child safety and well-being. The financial investment required for intensive therapeutic intervention represented a significant commitment that would require adjustments to family spending priorities and lifestyle expectations. However, the potential benefits of successful treatment far outweighed the economic costs of ongoing family dysfunction and protective restrictions. Insurance coverage for therapeutic services was limited, requiring substantial out-of-pocket expenses that would strain our family budget despite our relatively comfortable financial circumstances. The recognition that healing and safety required financial sacrifice demonstrated the true cost of addressing complex family trauma. Dr. Coleman's payment policies included sliding scale options for families experiencing financial hardship, reflecting her commitment to making evidence-based interventions accessible to diverse economic circumstances. Her flexibility regarding payment arrangements enabled us to pursue comprehensive treatment despite budgetary constraints. The commitment to therapeutic intervention represented a fundamental shift in our family's approach to addressing interpersonal challenges and psychological distress. Previous patterns of avoiding difficult conversations and hoping problems would resolve independently were replaced by systematic engagement with professional expertise and evidence-based solutions. Natalie's willingness to participate in intensive therapeutic work demonstrated genuine commitment to addressing the underlying factors that had contributed to Emma's injury. Her cooperation with Dr. Coleman's treatment recommendations provided hope that meaningful change was achievable despite the severity of the initial crisis. The therapeutic journey ahead would require sustained effort, emotional courage, and willingness to examine painful aspects of family history and individual psychological functioning. However, Dr. Coleman's expertise and systematic approach provided realistic hope for transformation rather than merely managing ongoing dysfunction. The glimmer of possibility that emerged from Dr. Coleman's assessment represented the first genuine hope for family healing since the crisis began. Her professional optimism was grounded in clinical experience and evidence-based practice rather than wishful thinking or denial of serious challenges. As our family prepared to embark on intensive therapeutic intervention, we faced the prospect of difficult self-examination and sustained commitment to change. The work ahead would test our relationships and individual psychological resources. But Dr. Coleman's guidance provided confidence that meaningful progress was achievable, with appropriate professional support and family cooperation. The opportunity for comprehensive healing had emerged from the devastating crisis that could have permanently fractured our family relationships. Dr. Coleman's intervention offered transformation rather than mere survival, providing systematic approaches to addressing root causes rather than managing symptoms of ongoing dysfunction. The morning of our first family therapy session arrived with the kind of crisp autumn clarity that suggested new beginnings were possible. Dr. Coleman's office building stood against a backdrop of golden maple trees, their seasonal transformation serving as an appropriate metaphor for the changes our family hoped to achieve through professional intervention. The parking lot was nearly empty at 8 o'clock, providing privacy for what would prove to be one of the most emotionally challenging conversations in our family's history. Natalie's demeanor during the drive to the appointment reflected the internal transformation that had begun during her individual sessions with Dr. Coleman. 3 weeks of intensive therapeutic work had begun to address the underlying trauma that had influenced her behavior toward Emma, creating space for genuine emotional vulnerability that had been absent from family interactions for years. The waiting room atmosphere was deliberately calming, with soft lighting and comfortable seating arrangements designed to reduce anxiety before difficult therapeutic sessions. Emma accompanied us to the appointment, as Dr. Coleman believed that including her presence would provide important observational data about family interaction patterns, while ensuring that therapeutic interventions remained focused on her safety and well-being. Dr. Coleman greeted our family with the professional warmth that characterized her therapeutic approach, immediately noting the subtle changes in Natalie's posture and facial expressions that indicated meaningful progress in individual therapy. The transformation was not dramatic, but trained clinical observation could detect reduced defensiveness and increased emotional availability that suggested readiness for family-level intervention. I appreciate everyone's commitment to this process. Dr. Coleman began with acknowledgement of the courage required for engaging in family therapy during crisis situations. Today's session will focus on establishing safe communication patterns and beginning to rebuild trust through structured interaction exercises. The therapy room was spacious and comfortable, with natural lighting and child-friendly furniture that accommodated Emma's presence while maintaining the professional atmosphere necessary for effective therapeutic work. Video recording equipment was positioned discreetly to document sessions for therapeutic review and progress assessment, with appropriate consent obtained from all participants. Dr. Coleman's initial exercise involved each family member sharing their perspective on the events that had led to our current situation, with specific guidelines for respectful listening and non-defensive communication. The structured format provided safety for expressing difficult emotions while preventing the kind of reactive arguments that had characterized previous family discussions. My mother spoke first, describing her experience of discovering Emma's injury and the professional obligations that had required her to contact Child Protective Services. Her account was measured and factual, reflecting both medical expertise and maternal concern for her granddaughter's safety and well-being. The decision to involve authorities was the most difficult professional choice I have ever made. My mother admitted with visible emotion that contrasted with her usual composed demeanor. However, my responsibilities as both a physician and grandmother required prioritizing Emma's protection over family harmony. The acknowledgement of internal conflict between professional duties and family loyalties provided important insight into the complexity of decisions that had shaped our crisis response. Dr. Coleman noted the significance of my mother's willingness to prioritize child safety despite personal and professional costs. David's perspective as both family member and legal professional highlighted the systemic factors that had contributed to our situation, while emphasizing the importance of accountability and appropriate intervention. His training in family law provided valuable context for understanding the protective measures that had been implemented. Legal intervention in family situations is never ideal, but it becomes necessary when informal systems fail to protect vulnerable individuals. David observed with the analytical clarity that characterized his professional approach. The goal should always be restoration of healthy family functioning rather than permanent separation. My own account focused on the maternal instincts that had been triggered by witnessing Emma's injury, and the subsequent realization that warning signs had been present but inadequately addressed. The therapeutic framework provided safety for expressing the guilt and self-blame that had complicated my emotional processing since the incident. I keep questioning whether I failed in my responsibility to protect Emma by not recognizing the danger signs earlier. I admitted with the kind of vulnerable honesty that family therapy was designed to facilitate. The guilt about potentially enabling harmful behavior has been almost overwhelming. Dr. Coleman's response addressed the common tendency for family members to assume excessive responsibility for others' behavior while neglecting the systemic factors that contribute to complex family dynamics. Her intervention reframed individual guilt within broader understanding of family systems and shared responsibility for creating healthy environments. When Natalie's turn arrived, the transformation that had occurred through individual therapy became apparent in her willingness to acknowledge responsibility for her actions. while exploring the underlying psychological factors that had influenced her behavior. The defensive hostility that had characterized her previous responses was replaced by genuine remorse and commitment to understanding her emotional patterns. I realize now that my feelings about Emma were connected to grief I thought I had processed years ago. Natalie shared with emotional authenticity that surprised all family members. The individual therapy sessions have helped me understand that hurting Emma was really about my own pain and loss, not anything she had done. The acknowledgement of displaced emotional processing represented a breakthrough in Natalie's therapeutic engagement and provided foundation for meaningful family healing. Dr. Coleman noted the significance of Natalie's ability to connect her current behavior with historical trauma while accepting responsibility for its impact on others. Emma's presence during the therapy session provided opportunities for observing family interaction patterns in real time, while ensuring that therapeutic interventions remained grounded in practical child safety considerations. Her responses to different family members revealed subtle patterns of comfort and anxiety that informed therapeutic planning. Dr. Coleman's observational expertise enabled her to identify positive interaction moments that could be reinforced through therapeutic intervention, while noting problematic patterns that required specific attention. Emma's obvious comfort with my mother and me contrasted with her more cautious responses to Natalie, suggesting appropriate protective instincts despite her young age. The structured communication exercises that followed individual sharing were designed to practice new interaction patterns while maintaining safety for all participants. Dr. Coleman provided real-time coaching that helped family members recognize and modify communication habits that had contributed to misunderstanding and conflict. One particularly powerful exercise involved Natalie expressing remorse for her actions while I practiced receiving her apology, without minimizing the seriousness of what had occurred. The guided interaction allowed both participants to experience genuine emotional connection while maintaining appropriate boundaries regarding accountability and safety. Effective apologies require acknowledgement of specific harmful actions, acceptance of responsibility, expression of genuine remorse, and commitment to behavioral change. Dr. Coleman explained, as she coached us through the interaction process. Similarly, receiving apologies constructively involves validation of harm without requiring immediate forgiveness or trust restoration. The therapeutic framework provided structure for navigating the complex emotions surrounding accountability and forgiveness, while preventing premature reconciliation that might compromise safety. Dr. Coleman's expertise ensured that healing proceeded at appropriate pace with adequate attention to protection concerns. The session continued with practical exercises designed to rebuild positive interaction patterns between Natalie and Emma under controlled circumstances. Dr. Coleman provided specific guidance about safe approaches to infant interaction, while monitoring both participants for signs of stress or discomfort. Natalie's first supervised interaction with Emma since the incident was carefully structured to ensure success while providing opportunities for positive reinforcement. The exercise involved simple games and gentle physical contact that allowed both participants to experience pleasant interaction without triggering trauma responses. Emma's initial wariness toward Natalie was evident, but began to diminish as the interaction proceeded under Dr. Coleman's skilled guidance. Her natural responsiveness to positive attention created opportunities for rebuilding the aunt-niece relationship within appropriate safety parameters. Infants have remarkable capacity for recovery when provided with consistently positive experiences. Dr. Coleman observed as she noted Emma's gradual relaxation during the structured interaction. However, rebuilding trust requires patience and sustained demonstration of safety rather than expecting immediate acceptance. The therapeutic session concluded with development of specific homework assignments designed to reinforce progress while maintaining safety boundaries. Natalie received structured exercises for continuing individual trauma processing, while family assignments focused on implementing new communication patterns in daily interactions. The commitment ceremony that Dr. Coleman facilitated involved each family member making specific pledges regarding their role in ongoing healing and safety maintenance. The formal structure provided accountability while emphasizing shared responsibility for creating healthy family functioning. My mother pledged to maintain appropriate professional boundaries while supporting family healing through therapeutic engagement. Her commitment included regular consultation with Dr. Coleman regarding safety assessment and therapeutic progress monitoring. David committed to providing legal guidance that supported therapeutic goals while ensuring compliance with Child Protective Services requirements. His involvement would help navigate the intersection between legal obligations and therapeutic healing processes. My own pledge focused on maintaining primary responsibility for Emma's protection while supporting family healing through active participation in therapeutic exercises and honest communication about ongoing concerns or observations. Natalie's commitment was the most comprehensive, involving continuation of individual therapy, active participation in family sessions, and specific behavioral guidelines for all interactions with Emma. Her willingness to accept extensive therapeutic requirements demonstrated genuine motivation for change. The family therapy session represented a decisive turning point in our approach to addressing the crisis that had threatened to permanently fracture our relationships. Dr. Coleman's structured intervention had created conditions for honest communication and beginning trust restoration, while maintaining primary focus on Emma's safety. The therapeutic work ahead would require sustained effort and emotional courage from all participants, but the foundation established during this initial session provided realistic hope for meaningful healing. Dr. Coleman's expertise had transformed our family crisis into an opportunity for deeper understanding and stronger relationships. The drive home from the therapy session was marked by thoughtful silence as each family member processed the emotional intensity of the experience. The structured communication and guided interactions had created new patterns of relating that would require practice and reinforcement in daily life. Emma slept peacefully in her car seat, seemingly unaffected by the therapeutic intensity that had surrounded her presence. Her resilience and adaptability continued to provide hope that family healing could occur without lasting negative impacts on her development and well-being. The evening following our first family therapy session was characterized by continued processing of insights and emotions that had emerged during therapeutic intervention. The structured exercises had revealed both progress and ongoing challenges that would require sustained attention through continued therapeutic engagement. Natalie's individual homework assignments included journaling about triggers and emotional responses related to Emma's presence, along with specific mindfulness exercises designed to increase awareness of psychological patterns before they influenced behavior. Her commitment to this work demonstrated genuine engagement with therapeutic process. The family homework involved implementing new communication guidelines during daily interactions, with specific attention to creating safe spaces for expressing concerns without triggering defensive responses. Dr. Coleman's structured approach provided concrete strategies for improving family functioning. The leap of faith that our family had taken by committing to intensive therapeutic intervention represented acknowledgement that meaningful change required professional guidance and sustained effort rather than hoping problems would resolve independently. Dr. Coleman's expertise had provided framework for transformation that extended beyond crisis management to genuine healing and growth. The path ahead remained challenging, with weeks of intensive therapeutic work required before normal family functioning could be safely restored. However, the progress demonstrated during our first family session provided confidence that healing was achievable, with appropriate professional support and family commitment to the therapeutic process. The weeks following our initial family therapy session unfolded with a complexity that tested every aspect of our commitment to the therapeutic process. Dr. Coleman had warned us that meaningful change would require consistent effort through periods of both progress and setback, but the reality of implementing new behavioral patterns proved more challenging than any theoretical preparation could have anticipated. Natalie's individual therapy sessions continued twice weekly, each appointment requiring her to confront deeply buried emotional trauma that had influenced her relationship with Emma. The psychological excavation process was exhausting and often left her emotionally volatile in ways that created additional stress for our entire household. Her commitment to attending sessions remained unwavering, but the aftermath of each therapeutic encounter rippled through family dynamics for days afterward. The structured communication protocols that Dr. Coleman had established for our family interactions required constant mindfulness and frequent correction of ingrained patterns. Simple conversations about daily logistics became exercises in therapeutic technique as we practiced non-defensive listening and clear expression of needs and boundaries. The artificial nature of these interactions initially created awkwardness that made everyone feel like actors performing scripted roles. Emma's developmental progress continued steadily despite the therapeutic intensity surrounding her daily environment. At 7 months old, she was beginning to demonstrate increased mobility and curiosity about her surroundings, requiring enhanced vigilance regarding safety protocols during supervised visits with Natalie. The intersection of normal infant development and family healing created complex dynamics that demanded careful navigation. The first significant struggle emerged during week 3 of therapeutic intervention, when Natalie experienced what Dr. Coleman termed a, quote, therapeutic regression. The psychological work of processing reproductive trauma had triggered intense grief responses that temporarily increased her emotional instability and created heightened risk for problematic behavior patterns. The regression manifested during a supervised visit when Emma began crying during a feeding session. Natalie's immediate response was to suggest forceful intervention to stop the crying, demonstrating that therapeutic progress had not yet created stable behavioral change under stress conditions. The incident required immediate implementation of safety protocols, while providing valuable data about ongoing therapeutic needs. Therapeutic regression is a normal part of trauma processing, Dr. Coleman explained during an emergency consultation following the incident. The psychological work of healing often creates temporary instability before sustainable change can be established. This regression actually indicates that meaningful therapeutic engagement is occurring. The professional reassurance regarding the normalcy of temporary setbacks provided crucial perspective for managing family anxiety about Natalie's progress. Dr. Coleman's expertise enabled her to distinguish between therapeutic regression and genuine deterioration of psychological functioning, ensuring that appropriate safety measures remained in place while supporting continued healing. The implementation of enhanced safety protocols following the regression included reduced duration of supervised visits and increased therapeutic frequency for Natalie. The adjustments were presented as temporary measures to support therapeutic progress rather than punishment for setbacks, maintaining motivation for continued engagement with the healing process. The impact of therapeutic regression on family morale was significant, creating doubt about whether meaningful change was achievable despite professional intervention. The emotional investment required for sustained therapeutic engagement was enormous, and setbacks challenged everyone's confidence in eventual success. My mother's professional experience with complex medical treatments provided valuable perspective on the therapeutic process and realistic expectations for progress. Her understanding of evidence-based intervention helped maintain family commitment during periods when emotional doubt threatened to undermine therapeutic engagement. Complex psychological healing follows similar patterns to physical rehabilitation after serious injury. My mother observed with clinical insight that provided hope during discouraging periods. Progress occurs gradually with inevitable setbacks that are part of the recovery process rather than indicators of treatment failure. The medical analogy helped reframe therapeutic setbacks as expected elements of healing rather than evidence of hopeless situations. Dr. Coleman's systematic approach to monitoring progress included specific metrics for measuring improvement that provided objective assessment beyond subjective emotional responses. The first significant victory occurred during week 5 when Natalie successfully implemented therapeutic techniques during a moment of emotional trigger without external coaching or intervention. Emma had knocked over a cup during a supervised meal, creating the kind of minor incident that had previously generated disproportionate emotional responses from Natalie. Instead of reacting with anger or inappropriate suggestions, Natalie paused, took deliberate breaths, and responded with appropriate concern for Emma's safety, while helping clean up the spill. The behavioral change was subtle, but represented genuine integration of therapeutic learning into spontaneous emotional responses. That was exactly the kind of response we have been working toward, Dr. Coleman noted with professional satisfaction during the subsequent therapy session. The ability to implement therapeutic techniques during emotional activation indicates meaningful psychological change, rather than mere intellectual understanding. The positive reinforcement of successful behavioral implementation provided crucial encouragement for continued therapeutic engagement. Natalie's visible pride in managing a triggering situation appropriately demonstrated that therapeutic work was creating genuine empowerment rather than external compliance with imposed restrictions. The ripple effects of Natalie's behavioral success influenced the entire family system. creating increased optimism about therapeutic outcomes and motivation for continued engagement with challenging psychological work. Small victories provided evidence that sustained effort could indeed produce meaningful change in complex family dynamics. Emma's responses to Natalie during supervised visits began showing subtle but measurable improvements as therapeutic progress created more consistently positive interactions. Her natural infant responsiveness to emotional authenticity meant that Natalie's increased psychological stability translated directly into improved relationship quality. The development of positive interaction patterns between Natalie and Emma required careful attention to pacing and appropriate expectations. Dr. Coleman's expertise in infant development ensured that relationship rebuilding proceeded at rates that supported, rather than overwhelmed, Emma's psychological capacity for trust restoration. Family therapy sessions evolved from crisis management to skill building, as therapeutic progress created foundation for more advanced intervention techniques. Dr. Coleman introduced communication exercises that addressed conflict resolution and collaborative problem-solving rather than basic safety establishment. The shift toward more sophisticated therapeutic work reflected genuine progress in family functioning, while acknowledging that continued growth would require sustained attention to psychological patterns and relationship dynamics. The therapeutic journey was far from complete, but measurable improvement provided motivation for continued investment in the healing process. My own therapeutic homework involved processing the maternal guilt and anxiety that had been triggered by the original incident and ongoing family crisis. Individual sessions with Dr. Coleman helped address the psychological impact of witnessing Emma's injury and the subsequent disruption of assumed family safety. The guilt processing work revealed important insights about perfectionist tendencies and control issues that had influenced my approach to motherhood and family management. Dr. Coleman's intervention helped develop more realistic expectations and healthy boundaries regarding personal responsibility for others' behavior. David's legal perspective provided ongoing assessment of therapeutic progress in relation to Child Protective Services requirements and potential modification of supervision protocols. His involvement ensured that therapeutic gains translated into practical improvements in family functioning and legal status. The intersection of therapeutic progress and legal requirements created additional motivation for sustained engagement with challenging psychological work. The prospect of restored normal family functioning provided concrete goals that supported continued effort through difficult periods of therapeutic processing. The financial strain of intensive therapeutic intervention created additional stress that required careful management to prevent undermining therapeutic progress. Insurance coverage remained limited, requiring ongoing out-of-pocket expenses that challenged family resources despite our relatively comfortable economic circumstances. Dr. Coleman's understanding of financial pressures on families engaged in therapeutic intervention led her to develop creative payment arrangements that supported continued treatment without creating overwhelming economic burden. Her flexibility regarding fees demonstrated commitment to therapeutic outcomes rather than purely commercial considerations. The time demands of therapeutic intervention required significant adjustments to family schedules and professional obligations. My mother's position as Surgeon General created particular challenges regarding public appearance management and maintaining professional effectiveness while engaged in intensive family therapy. The careful coordination of therapeutic requirements with professional obligations demonstrated the importance of prioritizing family healing despite competing demands and external pressures. The investment of time and energy in therapeutic work was substantial but necessary for achieving meaningful resolution of family crisis. Week 7 brought another significant victory when Natalie spontaneously offered appropriate comfort to Emma during a moment of infant distress. The natural maternal response represented integration of therapeutic healing with authentic emotional connection rather than mechanically applied behavioral techniques. Emma's positive response to Natalie's comfort demonstrated that relationship rebuilding was progressing, despite the artificial constraints of supervised interaction. The moment of genuine connection provided hope that normal aunt-niece relationship could eventually be restored within appropriate safety parameters. The therapeutic milestone was documented by Dr. Coleman as evidence of significant psychological progress and readiness for gradually expanded interaction opportunities. The systematic approach to relationship rebuilding ensured that progress was measured objectively, rather than based on emotional impressions or wishful thinking. The expansion of supervised visit duration and decreased frequency of therapeutic check-ins reflected genuine improvement in family functioning while maintaining necessary safety protocols. The gradual restoration of normal interaction patterns provided motivation for continued therapeutic engagement. Week 9 introduced the challenge of maintaining therapeutic progress during holiday season stress, when family gathering traditions would need to accommodate ongoing supervision requirements and therapeutic protocols. The seasonal pressures tested the sustainability of behavioral changes under increased emotional and social demands. Dr. Coleman's preparation for holiday challenges included specific strategies for managing family gatherings while maintaining therapeutic boundaries and safety requirements. The advanced planning demonstrated the importance of anticipating stress factors that could trigger regression or compromise therapeutic progress. The successful navigation of Thanksgiving dinner with extended family members provided another significant victory in demonstrating that therapeutic progress could be maintained under challenging social circumstances. Natalie's appropriate behavior during the gathering showed integration of therapeutic learning into complex social situations. The holiday success provided confidence that therapeutic gains were becoming sustainable rather than dependent on controlled clinical environments. The ability to maintain appropriate behavior during emotionally charged family gatherings suggested that meaningful psychological change was occurring. The completion of 10 weeks of intensive therapeutic intervention marked a crucial milestone in family healing, while acknowledging that continued work would be necessary for achieving complete restoration of trust and normal functioning. The progress achieved provided foundation for more advanced therapeutic goals and gradually increased autonomy. Dr. Coleman's assessment of therapeutic progress indicated readiness for transitioning from crisis intervention to maintenance therapy focused on preventing regression and supporting continued growth. The shift in therapeutic focus reflected genuine improvement in family functioning and reduced risk for future incidents. The early struggles and small victories of therapeutic intervention had demonstrated both the challenges and possibilities inherent in meaningful family healing. The sustained effort required for psychological change was enormous, but the measurable progress provided hope that complete restoration of healthy family relationships was achievable through continued commitment to therapeutic process and professional guidance. 3 months into our therapeutic journey, Dr. Coleman scheduled a comprehensive assessment session that would fundamentally shift our understanding of the healing process and provide deeper insights into the psychological mechanisms underlying family transformation. Her request for an extended 3-hour consultation indicated that our case had reached a critical juncture requiring expanded therapeutic intervention and more sophisticated clinical guidance. The session took place in Dr. Coleman's private consultation room, a space reserved for complex case analysis and advanced therapeutic planning. The environment reflected her extensive clinical experience, with walls lined with professional journals, research publications, and awards recognizing her contributions to family trauma intervention methodology. The setting emphasized the scientific foundation underlying her therapeutic approach while maintaining the warmth necessary for effective clinical relationships. Dr. Coleman began the session with a comprehensive review of our family's progress, utilizing detailed documentation and video analysis from previous sessions to illustrate specific behavioral changes and relationship improvements. Her systematic approach to progress assessment provided objective evidence of therapeutic gains while identifying areas requiring continued attention and intervention. Your family's response to therapeutic intervention has been remarkable in several significant ways. Dr. Coleman observed with professional satisfaction that validated our commitment to the challenging healing process. The willingness to engage with difficult psychological work and implement behavioral changes demonstrates exceptional resilience and commitment to growth. The professional acknowledgement of our progress provided crucial validation for the substantial emotional and financial investment our family had made in therapeutic intervention. Dr. Coleman's expertise enabled her to recognize meaningful change that might not be apparent to family members immersed in daily implementation of therapeutic strategies. The assessment revealed that Natalie's individual therapy had successfully addressed the core reproductive trauma that had influenced her displaced aggression toward Emma. The psychological work had enabled her to process grief and loss in healthy ways, while developing alternative coping mechanisms for managing emotional triggers related to infant care and family dynamics. The resolution of underlying trauma has created foundation for sustainable behavioral change. Dr. Coleman explained with clinical precision that illuminated the connection between psychological healing and practical safety outcomes. Natalie's ability to recognize and manage emotional triggers represents genuine therapeutic breakthrough rather than superficial compliance with behavioral expectations. The distinction between authentic psychological change and mere behavioral modification was crucial for understanding the long-term sustainability of therapeutic gains. Dr. Coleman's assessment indicated that Natalie had achieved fundamental shifts in emotional processing rather than simply learning to suppress problematic responses through external control. The family systems work had successfully addressed communication patterns and relationship dynamics that had enabled problematic behavior to escalate without appropriate intervention. Dr. Coleman's guidance had helped establish healthy boundaries and conflict resolution strategies that supported ongoing safety while preserving meaningful family connections. Effective family functioning requires balance between individual autonomy and collective responsibility. Dr. Coleman observed with systems thinking that provided framework for understanding complex relationship dynamics. Your family has learned to maintain personal boundaries while supporting each other's growth and well-being. The therapeutic insight regarding balance between individual needs and family obligations provided guidance for navigating future challenges and maintaining healthy relationships during stress periods. Dr. Coleman's wisdom extended beyond crisis resolution to sustainable family functioning across diverse circumstances and developmental changes. The assessment session included detailed discussion of Emma's developmental progress and her responses to improved family dynamics. Dr. Coleman's expertise in infant psychology enabled her to evaluate the impact of family therapy on Emma's emotional and social development, ensuring that therapeutic interventions supported, rather than disrupted, her normal growth patterns. Emma has demonstrated remarkable resilience throughout this process. Dr. Coleman noted with professional admiration for infant adaptability under challenging circumstances. Her positive responses to improved family interactions indicate that the therapeutic work has created optimal conditions for healthy development, rather than causing additional trauma. The reassurance regarding Emma's well-being addressed ongoing parental concerns about potential negative impacts from exposure to family conflict and therapeutic intervention. Dr. Coleman's assessment confirmed that protective measures and improved family functioning had successfully minimized developmental risks. The mentor relationship that had developed between Dr. Coleman and our family extended beyond clinical service provision to encompass educational guidance about psychological principles and relationship dynamics. Her willingness to share professional insights and theoretical frameworks had enhanced our understanding of human behavior and family systems functioning. One of the most important concepts for maintaining long-term family health involves understanding the difference between enabling and supporting. Dr. Coleman explained with pedagogical clarity that transformed clinical insights into practical wisdom. Supporting involves providing assistance that enhances individual capability, while enabling involves preventing natural consequences that promote growth and responsibility. The distinction between supportive and enabling behaviors provided crucial guidance for future family interactions, particularly regarding Natalie's continued recovery and ongoing relationship with Emma. Dr. Coleman's wisdom helped establish appropriate boundaries that supported healing while maintaining necessary accountability for behavioral choices. The therapeutic relationship had evolved from crisis intervention to mentorship, as our family demonstrated readiness for more advanced psychological concepts and relationship skills. Dr. Coleman's expanded role reflected both our progress and her commitment to providing comprehensive guidance for sustainable family transformation. Successful therapy creates conditions for individuals and families to become their own therapeutic agents. Dr. Coleman observed with professional philosophy that emphasized empowerment rather than dependency. The goal is developing internal resources and wisdom that support continued growth beyond formal therapeutic intervention. The emphasis on developing internal therapeutic capacity provided motivation for continued learning and self-reflection, rather than relying permanently on external professional guidance. Dr. Coleman's approach fostered independence, while ensuring that adequate support remained available during challenging periods. The session included practical guidance for managing future stress periods and potential triggers that could challenge therapeutic progress. Dr. Coleman's preventative approach to mental health emphasized proactive strategies for maintaining psychological stability rather than reactive crisis management. Stress management requires both individual coping skills and family support systems. Dr. Coleman explained with comprehensive understanding of psychological resilience factors. Your family has developed both components through therapeutic work, creating multiple layers of protection against future challenges. The multi-layered approach to psychological protection provided confidence for managing future difficulties without compromising safety or therapeutic gains. Dr. Coleman's wisdom encompassed both immediate practical strategies and long-term philosophical approaches to family well-being. The assessment revealed readiness for transitioning from intensive therapeutic intervention to maintenance counseling focused on supporting continued growth and preventing regression. The shift represented recognition of genuine therapeutic success while acknowledging that ongoing professional consultation remained beneficial for sustained family health. Maintenance therapy serves a different function than crisis intervention, Dr. Coleman clarified with professional expertise that guided realistic expectations for continued therapeutic engagement. The focus shifts from addressing acute problems to supporting ongoing development and maintaining therapeutic gains. The transition to maintenance therapy provided both validation of progress achieved and structure for continued growth without the intensity required during crisis periods. Dr. Coleman's guidance ensured that reduced therapeutic frequency did not compromise family safety or therapeutic momentum. The wisdom session included discussion of potential future challenges related to Emma's developmental stages and changing family dynamics as she grew from infant to toddler. Dr. Coleman's expertise in child development provided anticipatory guidance for maintaining appropriate safety measures while supporting normal family interactions. Each developmental stage presents unique opportunities and challenges for family relationships. Dr. Coleman observed with longitudinal perspective that extended therapeutic planning beyond immediate circumstances. Anticipating these changes allows families to adapt therapeutic strategies rather than experiencing developmental transitions as crises. The developmental guidance provided framework for understanding normal family evolution while maintaining therapeutic insights and safety protocols. Dr. Coleman's wisdom encompassed both current functioning and future adaptability across changing family circumstances. The session concluded with development of a comprehensive family wellness plan that integrated therapeutic insights with practical strategies for maintaining psychological health and relationship quality. The plan provided structure for continued growth while acknowledging the substantial progress already achieved through intensive therapeutic intervention. Your family's transformation demonstrates the possibility of healing even after serious safety incidents. Dr. Coleman reflected with professional satisfaction that validated our investment in therapeutic process. The work you have accomplished provides foundation for lifelong psychological resilience and healthy relationship functioning. The professional recognition of transformation achieved provided motivation for continued commitment to therapeutic principles and family wellness practices. Dr. Coleman's acknowledgement of our success validated the difficult journey while emphasizing the ongoing nature of psychological growth and development. The mentor wisdom that Dr. Coleman had shared throughout our therapeutic journey encompassed both clinical expertise and human understanding of family dynamics under stress. Her guidance had transformed our crisis into opportunity for deeper connection and enhanced psychological resilience that would benefit our family across future challenges and developmental changes. The relationship with Dr. Coleman had evolved from professional service to trusted mentorship that would continue supporting our family's growth beyond formal therapeutic intervention. Her wisdom had become integrated into our family's approach to communication, conflict resolution, and mutual support in ways that created lasting positive change. The therapeutic mentorship had demonstrated the transformative power of expert guidance combined with family commitment to growth and healing. Dr. Coleman's wisdom had provided both immediate crisis resolution and long-term framework for psychological wellness that would support our family's continued development. The Mentor's Wisdom session marked a crucial transition in our therapeutic journey, from intensive intervention to sustainable family functioning, supported by integrated psychological insights and relationship skills. The foundation established through Dr. Coleman's guidance would continue supporting our family's growth long after formal therapeutic sessions concluded. 4 months after beginning our therapeutic journey with Dr. Coleman, our family faced the most severe challenge to our healing progress when an unexpected external crisis threatened to undermine everything we had accomplished. The setback emerged not from within our therapeutic work, but from professional pressures that would test every skill and insight we had developed through intensive family intervention. The crisis began on a Tuesday morning when my mother received an urgent call from the White House Chief of Staff regarding a developing national health emergency that required immediate Surgeon General response. A contaminated water supply in 3 Midwestern states had resulted in widespread illness, creating a public health crisis that demanded her full attention and expertise during the critical early stages of response coordination. The timing of the national emergency could not have been worse for our family's therapeutic progress. Dr. Coleman had recently reduced our session frequency to maintenance levels based on substantial improvement in family functioning and safety measures. The reduced therapeutic support structure left our family more vulnerable to external stressors, precisely when my mother's professional obligations would require extended absence from home. The water contamination crisis demanded that my mother relocate to the affected region for an indefinite period, coordinating federal response efforts while serving as primary government spokesperson for public health guidance. Her departure would remove the stabilizing influence that had anchored our family's therapeutic progress, while creating additional stress through separation and uncertainty. Natalie's reaction to news of my mother's emergency deployment revealed the fragility of therapeutic gains when subjected to unexpected stress. The prospect of losing the family matriarch who had provided both professional authority and emotional stability triggered anxiety responses that had been successfully managed through previous therapeutic work. "This is exactly what always happens in our family," Natalie declared with emotional volatility that had been absent from recent interactions. "Just when things start getting better, something comes along to disrupt everything and prove that stability is impossible." The regression to previous patterns of catastrophic thinking and emotional dysregulation demonstrated that therapeutic progress, while genuine, remained vulnerable to external pressures that overwhelmed newly developed coping mechanisms. Dr. Coleman's warning about the ongoing nature of psychological healing proved prescient as family stress exposed areas requiring continued therapeutic attention. Emma's response to the increased household tension was immediate and concerning. At 8 months old, she had developed sufficient emotional awareness to detect family stress, resulting in disrupted sleep patterns and increased fussiness that complicated daily caregiving routines. Her behavioral changes served as early warning indicators of family system distress. The practical implications of my mother's absence extended beyond emotional support to encompass supervision requirements for Natalie's continued interaction with Emma. The Child Protective Services Safety Plan specifically required that supervised visits occur only when approved supervising adults were present, creating logistical challenges for maintaining therapeutic progress during the crisis period. David's legal expertise became crucial for navigating the intersection of family emergency, therapeutic requirements, and child protection protocols. His immediate consultation with Linda Morrison from Child Protective Services ensured that appropriate modifications could be implemented without compromising Emma's safety or our family's compliance with legal requirements. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.